right, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the live webcast version of School PR Happy Hour. It is 8 o'clock Central. Me and Erin decided 30 seconds ago what we're going to talk about for the next hour or so. We'll see if it's an hour. But for those of you that are listening on the podcast version of the show, yes, we did a live video on YouTube last year at the end of season 1, and we decided why not do it again for season 2. So we are here today just to look back on what season 2 was and all the cool things that happened through the craziest year ever. But Erin?
Well, I would just like to say, for those of you that caught our last content episode that came out just a couple of weeks ago, you may have heard me mention that my goal for this wrap-up episode was to get Justin to record it more than 24 hours before it drops. So we've met that goal. I feel like we've hit the top. We can probably call it a day. We've done everything we can.
I mean, but let's be real. The episode that I recorded 3 hours before the deadline was a pretty great episode.
I can't talk about it because it was everything I expected that episode to be, including the intentional trying to stress me out. Thank you, I think.
Oh yeah. And then me and Adam actually connected yesterday on FaceTime over a Final Cut Pro issue, which is what we usually talk about, it feels like. Right. And we both just stopped for a second and we're like, hey, you remember that time we did a show 18 seconds before it was due? And yeah, it was awesome. So yeah. So
that's everything I've come to expect from this partnership. So it's important to, stay on brand.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. I was taking a drink right when you stopped talking. Tonight's drink is a Topo Chico with some Mio in it. It's flavored. It's called the Green Hulk. It's not as cool as it sounds. It's just because mineral water by itself gets old. So let's talk a little bit about season 2. A year where we weren't sure that we were going to do an episode. We were going to do a season. Remember, I don't know if you remember last year at this time during the show, we were talking about, hey, are we going to do this again? What's the plan?
I remember that we had this crazy idea to start this podcast, and it was going really, really well. And then halfway through, or slightly more than halfway through our first season, the world shut down and we're like, okay, dude, we're hanging on by a string here. We got to finish this. And as you said, we kind of hit the end of it. We did our wrap up and we're like, do we do this again? Do we not do this again? And so we charged right into season 2. We came out of the gate strong. But then, Justin, I don't remember if it was December or January. You and I both were just so fatigued. We were like, okay, we've committed to season 2. We have to see it through. But that's probably going to be it for this project. We were just so kind of world weary. And then things started to take a turn. And here we are, end of season 2, and our attitudes are a lot different than they were a few months ago.
And I think that is the story of this school year across the board. I think if you look at it, we all were excited to start a school year and actually have kids, whether they were on campus or virtual. You had a plan. Whereas in March, when everything happened, there was no plan. It was just...
we're making it up as we went. Absolutely.
Yeah. So now we started a school year and we're on fire to get excited to be around kids, tell stories again. And then by December, I think we all were exhausted. Every teacher, every school PR person. But now we're in that season where graduations are happening. And even though all this stuff has happened, you're seeing all these great stories and seeing these kids graduate and walk the stage, and kindergarten graduations are going on. I mean, it's kind of reigniting, and things just started to happen. And magically we are, you let the cat out of the bag during your last episode, but we are in for season 3. It's going to happen. We're already booking guests, and I have actually scheduled one and don't know when I'm going to interview her, but it's going to happen, and it'll happen before it's due.
No, I'm so proud of you. Well, I told you earlier, this is a little bit of a spoil here, but I tried to secure a guest for season 2 and we weren't able to connect in the right time frame, but this guest is very excited to come on the show. So I actually have my first guest as well, and I'm hoping to connect with that person, to meet them in person at the seminar, which we can talk about Inspire Seminar in a little bit. But yeah, we're kind of pushing through, as you said. I think some of it is just the numbers are looking a little bit better out there. A lot of us have had the opportunity to get vaccinated. Events are starting to happen in person again. And I think we couldn't put Josh. Hi, Josh. Thanks for joining.
What's up, Josh?
I think we couldn't really put a label on how much all of that would affect us, our mental health, and just our energy levels, being able to go out, see teachers, tell those stories in person. It was a lot more difficult. This time last year, we still didn't really know what was going on. I mean, we were just like, oh, it'll be better next year. It'll be better next year. And then kind of weirdly, it was worse.
Oh, yeah.
For a while.
I think it got worse in so many different ways. I mean, I think it wasn't just the pandemic. We had some other things we were dealing with this year.
Right.
It's an election year. It's a lot of us were looking to do bonds.
God, I forgot it was an election year.
There was an election, Erin. I don't know if you recall or not, but there was this huge election.
Yeah.
A few
kind of like a large
ago.
turnout, right? Yeah.
And it was, I mean, we are located in Texas. It was very intense down here. I know it was intense everywhere, but there's just so much, I think, ripple effect from that election on top of a pandemic, on top of everything else we saw last summer. Obviously, today or yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the George Floyd murder, but we were dealing with all of that. And then again, as it always does, public education totally redeems itself as we see kids walk across stages. And as we I mean, we'll talk about it at some point. I obviously shifted jobs this year, and fourth day of my new job, I was at a graduation for an alternative campus. And I interviewed a kid for his graduation speech, and he literally just for 5 minutes told the story about how he was a horrible student, but if he didn't find that campus at that time, he would not have graduated. I mean, the kid in his speech may or may not have cussed, and I may or may not have edited it out because it was his story. He talked about how his dad used to grab his legs and snatch him out of the bed because he was so lazy and wouldn't go to school. And it was, I mean, day 5 of a new job, and immediately I'm refreshed and I'm like, okay, let's do this. This is why we're here. And I mean, I think we're all feeling that right now as we're starting to see these graduations happen.
You know, I think that's a perfect segue. Why don't we do a check-in on kind of how our year went personally and professionally, and then we can talk a little bit about the show itself. So why don't you start it off then? You mentioned your big change.
Well, about a month ago yesterday, or today, what is today's date? Actually, I'm almost a month in. I shifted
26.
So about another 5 days will be a month. I shifted from Carroll ISD over to Grapevine Colleyville ISD as the director of communications, which literally is about 2.5 miles away from my old office. So it's really weird. You go to lunch every day. I'm still going to the same places. So when you get a new job, you're like, hey, there's all these new restaurants. No, it's the same ones.
The same ones.
I mean, it has triggered so many other changes. I mean, y'all met Kinley this year on the Valentine's Day episode, and telling that little buddy that, hey, you're not going to go to the school you love anymore because daddy doesn't work there anymore. That was a struggle. And then having the realization that you've been living in a house for 3 years, but all your friends, family, and everybody live an hour away. And so you have a realization there, and you decide to build a house in the middle of a lumber shortage. And then you decide to do a social experiment over the summer and move into a 2-bedroom apartment with an 8-year-old. And I mean, there's a lot of change, but looking back at it, everything happened in perfect timing. I mean, we had a lot of offline conversations about where I was at and what I needed to happen, and it all just kind of fell in line. Like, it wasn't sure, and then it happened, and then it happened, and then it was like, okay, now we've bought land, and our kid who's 8 is saying, I'm cool with going whatever school. I love our new house that doesn't exist yet. So, new job, that was awesome. I mean, obviously, I've enjoyed it.
It was a great team.
Young creatives, it's awesome. And then I know at the beginning of the year we talked about APR for me.
Yep. Where are we? Accountability check here.
We can go ahead and say that Justin did not do too hot at the APR cohort that he signed up with PRSA, I guess. But I will tell you that I was lucky enough to get into the short list on the INSPRA APR cohort that has been meeting for the last month and a half. And I think I put on my Twitter yesterday that I had like the aha moment where things started to make sense yesterday. And the way that it was explained was completely different than it was explained in PRSA. So if you are out there in school PR thinking about getting your APR, next time INSPRA opens this up, do it. I've done 2 non-INSPRA APR cohorts, and every time I'm like, I still don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Right.
The way it was explained yesterday, it all made sense, and immediately was able to see what I was writing and see how it actually was what you're supposed to be doing, but now I actually know what the terms mean. So I mean,
that's awesome.
Things like that. So it's good. That's what I'm going to do this summer, is just work towards that. And like I said, live in an apartment. So my backdrop of the videos that I'm going to do will look a little different because it'll be in the kitchen of an apartment. So yeah. So I'm not going to be the only one that has to explain how things are going, because you at the beginning of the year, kicked off a grad school program. Also, obviously you had already added Liam to the family, but you were still getting used to being a family of 4, and and you had just started a new job. So nothing crazy happened, but I mean, how's that going?
Yeah, most of the crazy, I guess really most of the crazy was kind of last year in the beginning of the pandemic, because I started the new job and I had the new baby in the spring of 2020. So it was really more just kind of adjusting to that change. And then anytime in my life that things are just kind of calm, I'm like, what else can I do? You guys hear me joke a lot about my high functioning anxiety and that I can't sit still. That's really not that much of a joke. It's all right, I need to overschedule myself. So yes, I started a grad program. I'm pursuing my master's in strategic communication with Sacred Heart University. That's in Connecticut, and it is a distance program, and it's going really well. I'm almost halfway through. I did the TCU Certified Public Communicator program a couple years ago, and I was able to convince Sacred Heart to give me 6 credit hours for that program. So technically, I'm slightly more than halfway through, and it's going really well. I'm making all A's, and that should be really hilarious to anyone that knew me as an undergrad. A little bit of a different student.
Well, that's why I didn't go get my master's. I think we had this conversation about you were trying to get me to do it at the same time you were doing it. And I said I'd have to do some extra work to get in there because that GPA wasn't too hot. But I will tell you that I have enjoyed the conversations that we've had offline, but also just watching you on Twitter as you discover the world of being a boy dad, because that's you're not a dad. Sorry, I'm a dad.
I'm following.
But I've enjoyed seeing the transition that you've done from girl mom to being a boy mom as well. I keep saying boy dad. Wow. But fun, just like we were talking before, I did something to kind of warm up my voice, and you're like, don't do that. Keep your tongue in your mouth. Don't do that. You look like my kid. And I can only imagine raising a boy. I love my daughter, but boys are kind of different. So I applaud what y'all are doing, and I've enjoyed watching it.
They're just odd. He's so, not to make this whole episode about kids, but he's so rough and tumble. And my daughter has from the beginning just been very dainty. I mean, I know Kinley's kind of into sports a little bit more than Fiona is, but they're both fairly girly in the fact that they went through a phase where they wanted really big bows. I mean, they were kind of doing that at the same time. And Liam, he's not really talking too much yet, but it's if there's an obstacle, Fiona goes around it, and Liam just goes right through the middle of it, which I think is just a perfect analogy for boys. They're just face first, plow through whatever's in their way. So it's been fun. It's been an adventure.
That's how I was. So, I mean, I bet you could have guessed that though. So I think talking about our kids is a good segue here. We're doing so much good radio segues.
We really scripted this. We're doing really well.
One of my favorite things, and I think that I'm hoping we find a way to do it in season 3. I don't know who we're going to interview, our pets. I don't know how that's going to go. Definitely. But the Valentine's episode this year with the girls was awesome, because what we start, let's hear what they think about our jobs, really shifted real quick to how awesome, even during a pandemic, our kids are, how resilient they are, and how much they love school. So I know with Fiona's interview, y'all really got into talking about school and things like that. Kinley's interview, that episode just was fun.
It was fun.
I love the little message that came out of that was from an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old. So what was your, as you were interviewing Fiona and those words were, because I didn't know what the heck Kinley was going to say.
Right. Could be anything.
What were you thinking as she started just to kind of open up and tell you a little bit about school, and what were you thinking as a mom?
Well, it's funny because when you're around your kid all the time, they do these kind of almost performative pieces, and that they're really hilarious, in a way that you can't even repeat the story because it's kind of a had to be there sort of thing. But there's something very intimidating about setting up equipment, whether that's turning on a camera or setting up a microphone. People feel okay, now I'm performing. And so they're not necessarily that authentic. And Fiona doesn't spend a lot of time in front of a microphone. So I had no idea how it was going to go. And she was a little shy in the beginning and just kind of, doing the 1-word answers and stuff. But she started to warm up, even to the point where I was like, okay, the audience doesn't care that you ride horses on Tuesdays, but only if dad's that's too much detail. Rein it back in. But I think what was probably neatest about that episode, and it was definitely one of my favorites, was without any planning to that, it became an open love letter to public schools and like what's going well. We knew all the things that weren't going well. We're still hearing all the things that aren't going well and what people aren't happy with. But there was a lot that was really special about this year. And I think our daughters did a really beautiful, very natural job of encapsulating that.
I agree. I think I know sitting here thinking about that interview because it was in this room and she was so nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And we started talking and she just started talking about how her teachers and how she loves them, how hard they're working and how she learns, how she can read. And I'm just like, you know what? You can. Mm-hmm. And I think that has been the theme for her year as just about any other kids is we can.
Right.
We can do this, even if we're stuck, if we're at home, even if we're not allowed in the school because we're on a 2-week quarantine because we sat next to a kid who sneezed once.
Right.
All the different things, they still can learn. They still can have fun, still be social. That's one of those. I mean, granted, it's also the first time I ever interviewed my kid, really, so that was fun. Yeah. But that was a favorite one. Another one that I really enjoyed that I did, and we won't talk about the Me and Adam episode because I think we all know that the bromance there would be just top episode of the season. Mm-hmm. But the live interview in the lobby of the TSPRA conference.
Yeah, you pulled that off well. When you told me you were doing that, I'm like, don't do that. Like the sound's it's not going to sound good and you won't be able to edit it quite the same way, but you pulled it off and Nicole's great. I mean, we knew Nicole would be a great guest.
Yeah, we set up over by the bar and I mean, no one was there in the area. And then the minute the mics came out, everybody came into the area.
And you're very famous, Justin.
They're at us like they weren't watching us record. They didn't know what we were doing. They just literally were like, oh, look, there's a microphone. Let's go be loud over there.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But that episode with Nicole is just, I mean, Nicole's one of our good friends here locally. And that we had just presented together at TSPRA. And it was, for me, it was more about the fact that I was sitting face to face with somebody.
For real.
This conversation for the first time in about a year. Whereas we've been doing all of these interviews because they're all over the country. We're not flying around the country, but if someone wants us to, we will, if we can get that paid for.
We're happy to come present. Just let us know. Yeah, just let us know. His name is Justin Deering.
Katie Deering. We'll let Katie handle that. She's the hard negotiator. But just having that conversation face to face, it was nice just to sit there. And I think the first 15 minutes, that's all we talked about was like, there's people around us. This is crazy.
So weird.
That was one that I truly enjoyed quite a bit.
You and I have not seen each other in person in a year. I think the last time we saw each other was TSPRA 2020 because it was right before everything shut down and I was still on maternity leave. So I wasn't really going anywhere after that. And then everything closed. You went to TSPRA this year. I didn't. I'm going to NSPRA this year. You're not. Like we have not seen each other. Which is so weird because I feel like we talk all the time.
I think that's one of the weird things, crazy things about this podcast is that we work together, don't work together at all. Like,
I know.
You do a check-in and say, hey, do you have an episode planned that's coming out in 4 days? I'll be like, chill, dude, I got it. Like, I haven't recorded it.
I'm recording it at midnight.
But I'm going to get it. And then I'll just know yours are there because they were done 4 months in advance. But we don't it's not like you're reaching out to me and saying, hey, Justin, I'm going to interview so-and-so about Twitter. It's just, hey, I've got an episode.
Yeah.
So it's like listening to my podcast, our podcast, but listening to your episodes is like listening to a podcast that I subscribe to. So it's just a weird dynamic. We are partners in this thing, but I have no clue what you're doing half the time. And I'm sure you absolutely have no clue what I'm doing most of the time.
I try not to question it.
When you listen to the shows, it's very fun because we learn, even though we're the hosts, I'm learning from your shows.
Yeah. Good. I hope so. That's the goal. You're the target audience there.
I need to learn as much as I can. I do want to stop here at 19 minutes and say, obviously, thank you again to our sponsor, Class Intercom, for being here for season 2. And I got to hang out with Taylor quite a bit at TSPRA and just pick his brain on different things. And we appreciate what they've done and the support they show for us. And we're excited to see what happens, see where we go next. I know I've already talked to Ben a little bit and they've got some ideas. We've got some ideas. We're going to hook up over the summer and kind of see what is next for School PR Happy Hour. But speaking of the summer, Erin, you said something a minute ago that really I'm not happy about, but you will be at the NSPRA conference.
I will.
I will be at the beach, which isn't bad. but I would like to be at the Inspire conference this year.
Let me tell you why this is a solid strategy. One, if I had to walk there and start right now, I wasn't going to miss going to New Orleans for Inspire. Like I told my husband before, like when I was in the middle of the job change and I didn't know if that was going to be part of my new role, I'm like, that we'll be budgeting for this, like I am going. So it turns out I'm only going to be able to be there for half of it because we have a district event, but half of Inspire is better than none of Inspire. So I'm going. But the other reason this is killer is because you won't be there. I will book my entire season before I leave, and you can just figure yourself out because I am hateful that way.
Well, just remember that they do release the conference booklet before you go. And I will be booking off of that book just like we always do. So I will reach out to the ones that I'm interested in. I will call dibs before you even have a shot to. So
challenge accepted, my friend. Challenge accepted.
So you're going to Inspire. I'm going to beach. We're going on a couple little trips. Like I said, we're building a house, living in an apartment. And then the rest of my focus this summer literally will be on moving towards my APR and figuring out what that timeline looks like. Professionally, other than mental health and just checking out for a little bit, what are you focusing on this summer?
Yeah, I'm actually going to try to take it kind of easy this summer because last summer was a little bit manic with it being new job, pandemic, just everything. So I'm still in grad school. My program is year round, so I'll have 2 different classes that I take over the summer. I'll be working on that. But then ironically, I have a break in my classes in August. And I've been talking to someone because I've made no secret of the point that I would like to get my APR at some point as well. It's just kind of trying to figure out when to fit everything in. So I've talked to the person that I think I may ask to be my mentor and just ask for some guidance. And she suggested that I start looking at putting the portfolio together, start assembling that. And I need to jump into a cohort and get some real guidance. But it's my understanding you can do that before you fill out the application. So I might take just kind of that break and set that up. And then in addition to that, at work, we're building out a rather large marketing plan based on some extensive research. So that's just kind of exciting in my nerdy way of the things that I like to do.
Well, yeah, I think that I have not filled out my questionnaire. I haven't filled out my application, and I'm 3 classes deep, and I'm feeling more confident as we go. And I've had a lot of great folks in school PR that will reach out to you if they even can hear that you wrote APR on a piece of paper at one point, as a possibility.
Yeah, if Josh is still listening, he's one of those. He is like Mr. APR, and he's super good about supporting everyone. So Josh, I don't know. I can't see if you're still on this call or not, but he's definitely one worth reaching out to.
So that is my plan for the summer, to enjoy my family, to enjoy, I've got a couple big projects that are coming up at the new job. That's one of the areas that I was handed was the marketing and branding of the district. So we are going to, and podcast. I get to do a podcast with this new district for sure. They have the exact same setup I have. So that makes me very comfortable. They don't have to learn anything. But most importantly, I think I'm just really going to enjoy some time with the family.
Good.
Just relax a little bit because it has been a crazy, traumatic year, pandemic, election, changing jobs, just society in general. I did want to mention this before we move on to season 3 talk. One of the cool things that came out of this season, I haven't told you this, I just kept this from you the entire season, was about episode 3. I got a email from one of our local T-Sprints and sprinters, Emily White, and her son was a senior and was doing a senior project, and his project was over podcasting.
Okay.
He needed a mentor.
Shut up.
So I have spent most of this semester talking and emailing and hanging out virtually with her son, Andrew.
That's
and he's awesome.
He's a great kid.
He just released his first podcast and he sent it to me. He goes, "How do I sound?" I was like, "Dude, you got the voice. He's got a podcast voice. He gets the flow. He understands interviewing." But so that was such a cool experience because it took me back to teaching a little bit and being involved in students. So just thank you, Emily, for reaching out. I know she's going to listen to this at some point. She said she was going to.
That's really, really great.
Really enjoyed mentoring your buddy. So your son. I don't know why I said your buddy. That was weird.
Yeah, I just called him a kid a minute ago, and I think he just graduated. So
yeah,
like
a grown. You're a grown. I almost said grown ass man, but you're a grown ass man. There you go. So season 3.
Well, before we get to season 3, I want to just shout out a couple of episodes that I did this year. Although it's kind of hard to pick a few because I really enjoyed every conversation I had this year. I made some amazing new friends. People have heard me mention Mark Mohammadpour, who I met through our show, and he's now presenting at Inspira. I got to start off my season by talking to one of my really good friends, Rachel, and so that's just fun. But I mean, besides the one with our kids, which is probably my favorite one that we did, there were 2 that really stuck out. And that's, if you know me, and most of you guys know me, I'm big on women empowerment and women supporting women. And so being able to circle back and talk with Kristen Majette again and talk, our Wonder Woman episode, that was just personally a very fulfilling conversation. And my latest episode with Kathy Kajigian, focusing in on internal comms, which is an area of interest, but not expertise for me. It was just a really fun conversation. Like, I feel like the quality of our episodes this year were just really there. And we were concerned about that because we thought all anyone would want to talk about is how difficult the year was and the pandemic and how it was unprecedented and take yourself off mute and just everything that we've been hearing for a year. But our guests really came through. I mean, we had some serious subject matter experts on our show this year.
Oh, yeah. I think for sure that I know we had that talk of, are people even going to want to listen?
Right. We did.
For the record, our numbers are through the roof. They're bigger than they've ever been right now. And that's not.
Did you check what our numbers were before we started this call?
I didn't check before this call, but we had pushed over 11,000 2 weeks ago. So I'm sure
it's higher. We've released a new episode.
But I think it just proves, and it's not this again. The show isn't like a great show because Justin and Erin are so good at interviewing. It really is, like you said, the guest we get, and I think this year it was. I think you said it perfectly. They brought their best, but it was. I think we all wanted to have conversations
about anything else.
About it, like I don't think we wanted 15 to 20 episodes about. So what did you do for COVID this week?
Yeah,
like let's go back to the base of it. Like internal communications is huge. That's one of our big goals in my new job. And I listen to your episode, even though you think I don't. I listened to your episode and reached out to Kathy, and she can tell you, I reached out to her and said, I don't want to be the guy who texts about work crap on the weekends, but I just listened to your episode and we need to talk about Be Well 34 because I could see that being a great transitional program into the new district I'm in. So,
she's amazing.
She's awesome. And, she's my friend, my cheese board friend.
Always talking your cheese board friend. We talked about it offline and I was like, I'm not putting that in. I'm not giving Justin that moment.
I just, I think we have so many people we've already talked to. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we had a few repeat guests and we talked about possibly not doing repeat guests.
Yeah, we did talk about that.
But it happened. But the more Twitter honestly has been really school PR-ish lately. People are coming back to Twitter. There's so many people we haven't talked to. Mm-hmm. There's so many voices out there that they haven't had a shot to come on yet. And part of it's, we book crazy early and we know what we're doing for the whole season. And sometimes we book last minute because we had people couldn't show up or things like that. But we want anybody and everybody who wants to be on the show, just reach out. That's how half the people that were on this year for me just texted and said, hey, I'd love to come on and talk about this. I was like, great. I'd love to have you. Yeah,
we're definitely not elitist. Like this is not I'm sorry, you don't make this tier. And so we're not talking to you. It's nothing like that at all. It is just kind of a perfect serendipitous alignment of my availability or Justin's availability, the guest's availability, and sometimes just what we feel like talking about that time. So my last one, I knew I wanted to talk internal comms and I didn't know who to talk to. So I kind of like shouted out to the hive mind on Twitter. And then I tag almost everything school PR. And Kathy came right back and she said, I don't know if I'm an expert, but it's an area of great passion for me. And I'm like, are you kidding? I get to talk to Kathy about anything? Yeah. How quickly can we get this done?
Yeah. And it's just the openness and willingness to jump on and, trust that hey, we're going to edit it to make you sound like a genius. That's our goal, obviously, is we want to make you sound as good as possible. But, I've said multiple episodes, I'm just taking notes over here. Sorry. And I've edited that out. I'm taking notes. Sorry. That's why I'm slow to ask you a follow-up question. But I mean, with, Christina Bumgardner from New York this year, we had a great conversation and we followed up for 3 or 4 weeks after that. And I went on her podcast and we talked about podcasting on her podcast, super meta. But we were having this conversation, but it just kept continuing on about content scheduling and strategically planning. And like, it's still every once in a while we're reaching out, talking about Clubhouse talks about like going on Clubhouse and sharing stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, and this is me being on, I thought we would be so burnt out after season 2 that we'd be like, guys, this was great. We're going to hand it to somebody else, but I'm
ready. I really am ready.
Season 3, because I think coming out of Inspira, being face to face, even though I won't be there, everybody's going to be so ready to learn and network and get to know each other that we're going to have a whole new flock of voices to introduce you to.
And there's a lot of people coming into the profession new, which I had some concern with, like, at least in Texas, I don't know about nationally, some state budget cuts and changes. I kind of thought people might just be leaving the profession, but there are a lot of new people. So Inspira is that perfect place where people show up for the first time and they make new friends. And yeah, I mean, I've been re-inspired to continue to do this project, and I'm ready for the break. I'm ready for some time to spend with my kids. I'm really ready for Fridays off where the kids are in daycare and I can get something done, but I'll be ready to come back when it's time to come back as well.
Oh, absolutely. And if you are listening tonight and if you haven't listened to the whole catalog, they're obviously all there. So I would say 90% of our episodes are pretty much evergreen. There's stuff that we talked about in season 1 that I really think we could just re-edit the open and it would be just as useful today. So I just would say, if you're missing my beautiful voice and Erin's beautiful voice over the summer, just roll back through that catalog and just listen to something from back in the day and keep going. I personally, I'm going to tell you, I am planning on hopefully launching a personal podcast over the summer if I can get my mind right, and multiple people on Twitter that are yelling at me for not doing it. So hopefully I'll launch something here pretty soon. And
are you finally going to interview me? Because every month when you don't know who to interview, I'm like, just interview me. It's fine.
Oh, I'm going to interview. I'm doing a podcast about being a girl dad.
Well, I'm not a girl dad, so I guess I don't. You can talk to Kevin.
I'll talk to Kevin. What if me and Kevin just had a podcast together? How do you think that would go?
I think it'd be ratings gold. That's what I think.
Well, we don't want to keep everybody too long tonight because, it's Wednesday night and tomorrow night's graduation, and we have graduation the next night. So I'm going to be real busy the next couple days. But Erin, thank you again. I said this last year. Thank you for when I said, hey, I've got this idea. And you were like, hell yeah, let's do it. Like that really was your response. And here we are 2.5 years after that. 3 years. Yeah,
really 3.
Literally 3 years after that idea spawned. And we've done 30 some odd episodes, 2 live YouTubes, 12,000 downloads. I mean, this boat is real. We are actually podcasters.
That's my favorite thing is anytime I send you stats, you tag me on Twitter and you're like, does this make us real podcasters? I'm like, I think when we released that first episode, we were real podcasters.
But this makes us real, like all 4
real.
Capitalized. Real. So thank you for jumping into this boat of school PR happy hour with me.
Well, I don't like to give you too many compliments, especially when other people can hear, but it's been a real honor. It's been a lot of fun. This has probably been my favorite thing I've ever done professionally because I'm growing and learning every time that we do a new episode, and it's just fun, and you've been the perfect partner for this. So very grateful to have been pitched to me. That was hard. English is hard.
Hey, it's Wednesday at 8:35. It's bedtime.
Right. That's exactly right.
Well, one more time, Class Intercom, thank you so much for sponsoring School PR Happy Hour this year. We appreciate you guys. To the listeners, we thank you so much for sticking with us and interacting with us over on Twitter on both our personals and our School PR Happy Hour one. If you're not on that Twitter, it's at SPR Happy Hour. I'm Deering22. Erin, where can they find you?
At McErin, MCERIN 2006.
Y'all have a great summer. Relax, cut loose, enjoy yourself. But most importantly, what should they try to do every day, Erin?
Let's all try to be a little bit better at our jobs every day.
There it is. We're done.
Woo!
We did the second live.
Did a wrap.
I'm going to hit stop before we really start talking about how yeah, I'm out. Oh, I didn't hit it.
You didn't hit it.